Ciao amici, benvenuti al Facile come Italiano. Hello everybody, welcome to Easy Italian. I'm Reza, and in this session we're going to talk about the last three topics we talked that were passato prossimo, imperfetto, and also modal verbs that are very super important topics in my own opinion in Italian language. But make sure I'll finish it quickly because well, it's just a review. So the first topic would be passato prossimo. Let's see how does it work and also check it for some time. So as I said, the first topic would be passato prossimo, and also as I said, it can be translated as simple past or present perfect in English language, okay? But actually mostly like present perfect, but you can also translate it as simple past. It doesn't have so much difference. Now, how do we make passato prossimo? We have to use two verbs. The first one would be an auxiliary or a helping verb, alright? That we would use avere or essere, to have or to be. And as the second verb, we use just the verb that we want to show our meaning with, but in the passato prossimo or the past participle form, okay? So when do we use avere? When do we use essere? We use avere when our verb doesn't show any movement. We use essere when our verb shows some movements, like for example, andare or venire, to go or to come, okay? These verbs show movements. Now, in a more professional way, if I want to explain, I would say that we use avere when our verb has objects, and we use essere when our verb doesn't have any object, okay? You can also describe it like that. Actually, it's more correct, but that one is easier. You can take whichever you understand better. So now we learned how to do that. And how do we make the passato prossimo or past participle form of a verb? I will tell you. I said that we have three forms of verbs in Italian language, right? The verbs that end with are, the verbs that end with ire, and the verbs that end with ere. For the first ones that end with are, we just take are and add ato instead of that, okay? Are would be replaced with ato. Then ire would be replaced with ito, and ere would be replaced with uto. Okay, remember that. But actually we have some special cases, like for example, venire, that ends with ire, but the past participle would be venuto, okay? But these are just some special cases, and these are not regular or many at all, okay? So, we learned this. Two more tips. When you want to use a verb that you have to put reflexive objective pronoun before that, okay? For example, like we had sentire, okay? It can mean to hear or to feel. Both. But when you want to use the meaning of to feel, you have to use a reflexive objective pronoun before that. Reflexive objective pronouns pattern was just like this. That is mitc, cvc, that is very easy. And when we want to use the verbs that we have to use a reflexive objective pronoun before them, we have to use essere as auxiliary verb, okay? It's the rule, you have to remember it, even these kind of verbs are not so many. So for example, if I want to say I heard, I would say ho sentito. If I want to say I felt, I would say mi sono sentito. Okay? We would change the auxiliary verb and also put reflexive objective pronoun before that. So the second topic would be imperfetto, okay? Imperfetto is just like past continuous or simple past in English language. Mostly you can translate it as past continuous, but you can also translate it as simple past in some special situations that I would tell you when those situations would happen. It's very easy, you will understand it and you'll see. So how do we make imperfetto? I said that we have three types of verbs in Italian language that are the verbs that end with are, the verbs that end with ire, and the verbs that end with ere, okay? So when you want to make imperfetto, you just have to take re from the end of them and add this pattern instead of that. That is very easy because it's just like the present conjugations pattern, just has vu or vi at the beginning of each pronoun. Vovi, va, vamo, vate, vano. Okay? And these are just some conjugation examples that I have said or haven't in that session. If you want to check, you just have to pause the video and check it and then continue watching the video. So after this, I have one more tip. I said that there are some special situations that you have to translate imperfetto as simple past. What are those situations? One of them is using essere. When you're using essere to be, well, I said essere is an irregular verb in this tense. Well, it's irregular in all the tenses. And well, here it's very irregular. I mean, it's completely different from the rest of the irregular verbs also because the conjugation is completely out of order, okay? Ero, eri, era, eravamo, eravate, erano. Now, when you're using essere in imperfetto, you have to translate it as simple past because if you don't, it wouldn't sound correct. Now, the second form or second special cases that happen when you have to use imperfetto and translate it as simple past is when you are talking about your desires or your ideas in the past. For example, you wanted to do something, you wanted to help that friend, you wanted to buy that thing. These are just some ideas that you had in the past and they remain in the past. So when you want to talk about them and use imperfetto, you have to translate them as simple past, okay? I mean, actually, you have to use imperfetto when you want to talk about your desires in the past. Just when you want to translate it, be careful to translate them as simple past because that's the correct way. Now, after this, we go for the next topic. So the third and also the last topic would be modal verbs. It wouldn't take so much time. It's just 4 verbs that we're going to talk about. But before that, let me tell you to remember to subscribe to the channel and also like this video right now. Go and like this video right now. How much would it take? Just tapping one button on your phone. It wouldn't even consume 1 calorie. Like the video and then subscribe to the channel so you can have access to the next sessions to come and learn Italian in the easiest way possible. So the modal verbs, they are 4 modal verbs in Italian language and they are volere, to want, sapere, to know, potere, to be able to, and dovere, to have to. Okay? How do we use them? Just like the rest of the verbs, just when you use them, you have to put a verb, when you're using them as modal verbs, you have to put the verb after that in its present infinitive form. How? For example, I want to say I can swim. Okay? Io posso nuotare. Nuotare means to swim. It's the present infinitive form of this verb. Nuotare, to swim. I can swim, io posso nuotare. As easy as that. Or for example, you can also use them in other tenses, like volevo comprare quella giacca. I wanted to buy that jacket. It's a desire in the past. I used imperfetto, see? So volevo, I wanted comprare, to buy quella giacca, that jacket. Volevo comprare quella giacca. Now, I have to tell you one thing. When you want to use modal verbs in passato prossimo tense, okay, in the past participle, there is one tip that you have to be careful about. When you put the modal verb and put the verb infinitive form of that verb after them, okay, if that verb, that infinitive verb that you're putting in front of them shows a movement, okay, or doesn't have any object, you have to use essere instead of avere, okay? Well, you can see that all the modal verbs are in a way that they have objects or don't show any movement, so you have to use avere for them. But when you're using them as modal verb and you have to put the verb in infinitive form after them, you have to also check that infinitive form of the verb. If that verb shows a movement or doesn't have an object, you have to use essere. How? For example, you can say sono potuto andare, okay? Sono potuto andare al ristorante, okay? I could go, or I have been able to go to the restaurant, okay? Sono potuto. Why sono? Because andare after potuto. We don't care about potuto anymore. The thing that matters is the infinitive form of that verb that comes after the modal verb, okay? So sono potuto andare al ristorante. As easy as that. The session is finished. The reviewing is finished. I hope it was useful for you. Remember to do those things that I told you. And well, I just wish you would always be happy and cheerful and successful in your life. Have a very, very great week.